Welcome to this episode of Vireka, and we are going to have a really interesting and a wonderful conversation with Dr. B. Chandrasekharan, Director of Central Leather Research Institute, a constituent unit of CSIR, and this institute is at Chennai. And before we continue this conversation, let's take a quick look at his brief profile.
Well-known leather technologist, Dr. B. Chandrasekharan is a pioneer in leather research in India. Presently, he is the director of CSIR, Central Leather Research Institute in Chennai. After having served as chief scientist and chairman of HRD cluster of CSIR CLRI. Dr. Chandrasekharan obtained his BTech and MTech from the AC College of Technology. He did PhD in leather technology from Anna University. Dr. Chandrasekharan specializes in cleaner production technologies, leather education, leather production design and development, CAD techniques for leather product design, organizational development consultancy in R&D, and organizational excellence. His expertise lies in inter-institutional cooperation and global R&D consultancy. Dr. Chandrasekharan heads one of the largest leather-related technology education centers, Graduate Engineers. With a training strength of over 300 students every year, it has designed a mechanism to accommodate 250 additional project interns from various academic institutions. Dr. Chandrasekharan has 15 patents and 3 copyrights to his credit and is a recipient of many national and international awards.
Thank you for sparing us this time and then being with us in this show. One thing that came to my mind when I landed in Chennai and then came to this institute is, today one can talk about, let's say, nanotechnology, one can talk about maybe computers, maybe one can talk about, what not. Leather and leather industry and leather research seems to be arcane. Maybe 200 years ago perhaps it has a role. Do we really have a role today?
Well, if you ask us, yes, and the leather industry or the leather as a profession, it will have, ever since it exists right from the humanity when it got evolved, and it will continue to be there as long as the human evolution is happening.
I looked at some of the human history material. Leather is seemed to have been used by a modern human being even as old as about 4000 BC, something like about 6000 years old. We know that leather has been used. Even if you look at in India, the mythologies, ancient seers are supposed to have been sitting on the hide of a deer or tiger. Perhaps today they are not that good to do that, but still, the hide has been part of the human history. What crucial role it plays in today's world?
Let me tell you, the leather industry itself got evolved, not with that, the fact that for making leather that we have to kill an animal. So definitely it is not that. And if you look at the whole industry scenario, the meat industry forms the basis and the source for providing as the raw material for the leather sector. So it is predominantly a byproduct of a meat industry.
Basically, some kind of a waste is being reused.
That's what, exactly. Okay. What I'm trying to say is it's a byproduct from a meat industry, but then the value, which, once the leathers are finished, so that has, if you look at over the years, the value addition to these raw material has tremendously increased, especially in terms of, when you look at, you've been talking about, you have kind of a prehistoric, when the human was evolved, the way they have used leather as a protective clothing or a covering to start with, and then slowly in a small form of a clothing. That's what basis or genesis for this to be utilized for a human this. And subsequently they went ahead for even using it as a vessels for drinking, for storing water and other things, and then even to protect their feet. Then slowly, these were almost, if you look at some of these activities or the usage, they're all, as you rightly said, it's all more than 3,000, 4,000 year old. Usage of these things. But as and when these things got evolved, the quality and the property of some of these materials that's being used, and usage of certain, in those days, certain biological materials in the name of tanning. So even that got evolved. So that means the value addition to the material and the value it fetched, so that got increased.
So this brings me to a very interesting question, like this processing of leather, we call it as tanning.
Yes.
So where does this word come from?
Well, the tanning is the one, it's a definition, the converting a putrescible material like a raw hide or skin into an imputrescible or a non-putrescible material.
Okay, which I mean that the skin should naturally decay, but you are making it not decay and stay for a long time.
It's a longer time. That's what we say. Because, it's being a natural material, it is susceptible for bacterial damages. When you leave it without processing anything. So when you try to convert that into an imputrescible material, and this happens in the absence of water. Actually, water, or what we call the moisture, is an enemy that would propagate the leather to get putrefied. So the reason in those days, olden days, when these hides and skins were sun dried, that's how they preserved these materials. The moment the moisture was taken out of this, and they could preserve it for a longer time. Some of the ancient usage is the leather being used in the form of musical instruments. Even that dates to several thousand years. And if you see, most of those instrumental leathers used for those instruments, the percussion instruments especially.
Yeah, so musical instrument usually uses untanned leather. That's what you were trying to say. Okay.
I wouldn't call it as it's not a fully tanned, but to some extent it is processed, but it is not exactly the tanning, the regular tanning, whatever in the current days, what we do. It is not done that way. So when we say that, the conversion, even this has evolved. And ancient days, they were trying to use materials like the barks and other, tannins that is coming out of biological sources, the plant sources basically. And even people have started using certain oils that could do the tanning, especially the fish oil and some of those.
No, what happens to the skin? Usually we use the skin of some animals as hide. Whether we are making a leather product, whether it is apparel or, as you were pointing out, it's a natural product. If you had not touched it along with the animal, it would have, disintegrated, right? Bacteria would have attacked it, it would have eaten it and then made it into small pieces, and the organic material would have gone. But what makes it stay together? What happens actually? What kind of chemical or biological changes that takes place there?
It's when we talk about leather process or a leather making from a raw hide or skin stage, there are several stages involved. Basically, we are looking at the hair part of an animal has to be removed from the hide or skin, and subsequently that is what makes it unique. In fact, the different arrangement of hair patterns. So because we are able to look at a goat skin or a sheep skin or a cow hide or a buffalo hide, we are able to distinguish based on the type of hairs, the hair pattern, and that remains even after the removal of the hair as a grain pattern. So it is basically the hair structure gives us a kind of a unique
fingerprint for the
material. So where is the source that is coming from? Whether this hide or skin is from the goat or a sheep, or for that matter even whether it is an endangered species of a different origin. So it is that determines that.
Yeah, coming back to the question that why the skin it does not disintegrate. I mean, why the bacteria don't come and eat it up.
If you look at predominantly these hides or skins are collected from different parts of the country or the world, and this has to be brought to an industrial related atmosphere. So that means it has to be transported. So this transportation, depending upon the duration that requires, that means it has to be cured first. Cured in a sense, not necessarily tanned, because the tanning happens in an industrial environment. But at the raw material collection stage, a temporary preservation, one should say. Predominantly people use salt to preserve these materials. And that's where, they use the common salt, apply it, and then, with that stage, this can be transported without the bacteria affecting it. The salt functions as a bacteriostatic agent.
Okay.
And also it controls the moisture also on your raw hide or skin. So it takes up the moisture and leaves it as a bacteriostatic condition. So that is how these hides and skins in a salted condition are transported to an industrial stage, and subsequently they remove the salts when they take up for a processing, and then, as I said before, the hair part of it also removed. There is a process called a liming and an unhairing, where they use the chemicals like a sodium sulfide and lime as a mixture, and which when it applied, and in about 1 or 2 days time, so you get the hair part removed, and subsequently they condition the hide or skin to receive the other treatments that happens to it.
Okay, fine. We'll talk about this and then we'll continue this conversation. We'll take a very short break. After the break, I'm going to ask him what are all the different kinds of hides that we are actually using. We may know about buffalo, perhaps we may know about goat, but then are there many others? What are them? And how important is their institute for building a new India? We'll have a conversation, continue this conversation, take a small break, keep watching Eureka. Welcome back to Eureka, and we are having a very interesting and engaging conversation with Dr. B. Chandrasekharan, Director of Central Leather Research Institute, a constituent unit of CSIR in Chennai. About every year, India is selling close to about 40,000 crores worth of animal hides. We are exporting it. What is our position globally? Where are we in terms of leather production, availability, extracting it, selling it? Where are we right now?
So if you look at the global hides and skins production, I'm not talking about finished leather, but then I'm talking about the hides and skins itself. We have about 7% of the global hides and skins production.
Okay.
And if you look at our animal population, the domestic animals, which are the major source of for our hides and skins availability. In goat, we are number 2.
We are number 2.
We are number 2. And in sheep, we are about number 4th in the world. And especially in buffalo, we are the number 1. And in fact, in the combined, this of a cattle, also we are number 1 in terms of population.
In terms of population. Okay.
But then when it is coming to the question of availability of hides and skins that are available after it is flayed or after for the meat industry, that way if you look at, so we are somewhere around 7% of the total hides and skins produced.
Produced all over the world.
All over the world. In that, when we look at, approximately we have about 3 billion square feet of hides and skins.
Which are
processed and then getting into a finished leather. So we have about 3 billion square feet of finished leather production coming out of these raw materials.
Now, when we talk about leather, everybody will know about footwear and perhaps a belt. In addition to these two, what are all the various places leather is actually used?
We are probably the second largest footwear manufacturers in the world.
Okay.
When it comes to production wise. And we are also second largest in the leather garments. So that would answer, apart from the belts and the footwear, so we also cater to an apparel, it's a leather apparel. And there are also accessories, especially the handbags and other various smaller items. And there are some special products like saddle and bridle, and where, I mean, these are very small quantity, but then there are special items.
Specialized, very specialized.
And we have industrial gloves and smart gloves, or a fashion gloves, what we call, and even sports gloves. And there are several sports goods which goes with the manufacture of leather products.
See, when you look at leather and people involved in leather and leather industry, they are not necessarily from, let us say, upper crust of the society, but really from the downtrodden or disadvantaged section. What are the kind of numbers that we are talking about? How many people you think are involved in this leather industry in India?
If you say that according to the latest information, we have about 3.5 million people engaged.
3.5 million
people engaged in the leather and product sector. And in the next 4 or 5 years, we have an opportunity to enhance this to another 2.5 million, totaling to about 6 million people who would be directly or indirectly involved in this leather and leather product manufacture.
See, it's an industry which has given employment, particularly to disadvantaged group, in a very huge number, not just in tokenized fashion, but then in a very large number. But then one of the concerns that most people have about leather industry, the moment you talk about leather industry, is pollution. For example, one of the places very near to Chennai called Chromepet. The name itself comes from the pollution coming out of a leather industry which existed in those areas, and once upon a time it was considered as the most polluted place nearby Chennai. So leather industry also has this what can we say? Yeah, I mean black mark about itself. I mean, what do you think about it? Why it's very polluting industry?
As you rightly said, and as I said before also, the leather processing itself has evolved, and 100 years before, or about 150 years before, it was all only the natural materials from the plant sources. So we've been using the tanning materials, so there were no issues. But then, as I said, the properties, the demand for very soft leathers and the light-weighted leathers demanded them to look at alternative tanning materials. That's how the chrome tanning got evolved in the later part of the 19th century. The chrome tanning was invented, and from the first part of 20th century, people started tanning the materials using the basic chromium tanning salt. And even today, more than 80 to 85% of the finished leathers are tanned using the basic chromium sulfate. So it is a chrome tanning material which has come to stay, and that is now posing as, especially the untanned materials, the non-tannins, whatever we call, which goes into an effluent, that is what causing the kind of an environmental issues. But the recent research developments in the Central Leather Research Institute, we are now looking at bringing down this chrome tanning pollution and thereby making this process also a greener one.
What exactly are you working on? Like, how do you remove this heavy metal like chromium from this kind of tanning process?
Well, I mean, we are now looking at the conventional chrome tanning process employs about the 60% of the material is taken by the leather or the hide or skin, but the remaining 30 to 35% goes into effluent. Now, actually, we are now looking at how do we reduce these materials that go into the drains. So we are now actually working on processes and products wherein I can go for 99% of uptake of these chemicals. That means we don't let out any material outside. And one of the recent or a significant development what we have done is waterless chrome tanning.
Waterless chrome tanning.
And in fact, this is what nearly about 100 tanneries all over the India we have demonstrated and transferred this technology. And this now, what we are now looking at, this eliminates use of acid and salt, which is used prior to a tanning. So we are eliminating that, and we are also eliminating water to be used for this tanning. So whatever the inbuilt moisture, that is sufficient to take my chrome tanning to the conclusion. So in that process, what we are doing is we are reducing the acid and salt to about 20% usage, And the chrome tanning material, also I am trying to reduce the consumption of my chrome tanning material by about 20%. And my water, when I don't use water, and subsequently that means I am not letting out any chrome tanning effluent going out in the process.
So, which means that a kind of a green leather is in the
Yes.
offing. I mean, if
Yes.
our work gets better, then the green tanning is in offing. We'll take a very short break. It's getting very interesting. We are going to talk about how this institute came about. Who would have thought about establishing a industrial research for leather? That too about 70 years ago. We are going to discuss about this after the break. Keep watching Eureka. Don't go back. Welcome back to Eureka, and we are having a very exciting conversation with Dr. B. Chandrasekharan, Director of Central Leather Research Institute in Chennai, a constant unit of CSIR. Way back 70 years ago, this institute was formed. In some sense, perhaps the age of this institute and the age of this Indian Republic is almost same. 70 years ago, who would have thought about setting up such an institute for doing research on leather? That's baffling. What's the history behind it?
Well, this all goes back in 1944 itself. CSIR gave a grant of 60,000 annually to the University of Madras to establish an academic program for leather. So, CSIR has foreseen that in the development of an industrial research laboratories all over the country, they thought, this region being a leather intensive, a focus for this, and to develop an institution, there has to be a good academic background, must be a basis for that. And that is what we envisioned in setting up an academic program. And in 1945, the leather technology program with the University of Madras was commenced. And in 1948, citing that there is an academic background, an industrial, strong industry, so the CSIR promotes a laboratory in Chennai in 1948. The foundation stone was laid in April 24th, 1948. And in 1950, we started a full-fledged laboratory. Then the university took a landmark decision. Now that there is a national laboratory, the Department of Leather Technology would not be with the university, and that would be functioning from the research institution. And ever since this setup happened, we provide the leather technology program for the university. So there is no leather technology department in the university, but the leather research institute.
You are collaborating and do that. This brings us to a very interesting and important question. There is a research faculty here, there is an academic faculty here because you are also conducting academic program. But usually the third partner that is generally required for industrial research, which is industry. How strong is your tie-up with the industry?
Well, the mandate for this institute was to provide quality manpower for the industry, because the industry was at the nascent stages in the 40s and the 50s, where the advanced manufacturing processes were not known for the ethnic leather manufacturing activity of the country. That is where the professionalism was being built. And ever since we were doing this, and a batch of our qualified manpower getting out of this, they were going and occupying different positions in the industry, thereby enhancing the value of the materials. In fact, that while we were doing it as a research laboratory, we were also going to places where these industries were there, especially in Kanpur, in Calcutta, in Jalandhar, and Rajkot and Gujarat part, and where most of these industries were there, and many of our scientists went there and stayed there with those industrial people and developed processes which would upgrade their industry into a value-added one. And this started in the 50s itself, and that process when it go, and in 1970 there was a landmark decision by Government of India to ban the export of semi-processed or as crushed leathers. So that means forcing the industries to switch over to finished leathers as a part of value addition. That is where this institute handheld the industry how to upgrade their crushed leathers and the semi-processed leathers into finished products or finished leathers. And we didn't stop with that. In the 80s, we went ahead and established design and leather product manufacturing, especially footwear, leather goods and garment training facilities. So we went ahead, planned ahead, and so that we gave not only manpower for leather processing and tanning based activities, but for the leather product industries to come up. In fact, the government as well as the institute provided enough impetus to the industry to establish various leather product industries. That gave us a fillip to enhance the job or employment creation several fold.
Very, very important point. This brings me to a very important question that many people are asking today. There has been a huge investment of public money into this institute, and it's been there for about 70 years. What have you done, your institution has done for nation building in this 70 years?
Well, if you look at in the 1960s, the whole industry's export performance was somewhere around about 400 crores.
400 crores
Yes.
in 1970s.
60s.
60s, okay.
Yeah. From there, today we are talking about 40,000 crores of export performance and an equal amount of 40,000 additional for the domestic market. So imagine about 80,000 crores is a contribution, the turnover, annual turnover by the leather and product sector. And even if you put about 0.5% of that as a contribution of the institute's effort into that, that would run into several thousand crores worth
Every year.
Every year. That's
Yeah. So the institution's input is also in terms of human power, trained human power, plus also new technologies and also addressing concerns like environment, right? So there are multiple. So this brings us to our final question, because we also don't have much time. We are at 21st century. When the institute was begun, it was about 1950s. We need a new vision for the future. What do you have as new vision for the future?
Well, today for any manufacturing industry, sustainability especially is a biggest challenge. And for us, it is the environmental and economic sustainability we have taken as one. And we have now the annual plan for the leather sector being given by this institute is towards both economical and environmental sustainability, so that the industry can grow at the pace at which it is growing, nearly about 15 to 20% of annual growth, providing about 6 million jobs in the coming 4 years is our
So, which means that at one point of time you are expanding the industry, and today you are looking at the issue of environment, and then trying out to find out a greener way of producing and sustaining this industry. That's a very, very important and interesting point that you have made. We will have to end this conversation here. There are quite a lot of things to discuss, quite a lot of very interesting stuff this institute is doing. We'll perhaps get in another interview, maybe we should look at it. Keep watching Eureka. We'll come back with another exciting conversation next week with another Indian scientist. Thank you for being with us. We have had a very wonderful conversation, and it's been a very useful information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.